there was a report that out of the top 200 AI companies in the world, not even a single one from India. So that means we need to do a lot. So again, if we come in terms of investment, if you see the previous budget, the budget allocated for all these futuristic technology, if you compare it with China or US, it is not even 1% of that. So that is the state of affairs. Means we have our own limitations. Government has its own limitations. But even the startup culture, those startups who are doing very well and who innovate and who reach up to a certain level, so they are also kind of bought by all those multinational companies.
Thank you. It's a pleasure and an honor to have you, Mr. Deepak. So, to my listeners who don't know about you, I'm going to give them a small introduction and then we can get into the conversation. So, Mr. Deepak Garg is the director at leadingindia.ai and head of computer science and engineering at Bennett University. He's also the director at NVIDIA Bennett Center of Research on Artificial Intelligence, where he leads the largest skilling and research initiative in AI and deep learning in the country. He's done his PhD in efficient algorithm design in 2016. His active research interests are designing efficient deep learning algorithms. He's a senior member of IEEE, senior member of ACM, and a life member of CSI and IETE. He's also an in-demand speaker who's the chief consultant for algorithmguru.com, a resource for algorithms. And Deepak is considered as one of the deep learning gurus in India. He's also an active blogger with Times of India under the nickname of Breaking Shackles. So thank you, pleasure, and it's an honor to have you on Change and Possible, which is India's first feature tech podcast. So you have your hands full. You are part of Leading India AI, Bennett University, and also the research division. So what keeps you ticking and what it is about artificial intelligence that nudged you to dedicate your life to understand and educate people?
What takes me actually is the new innovations that keep on happening. So that kinds of keeps me amazed that how means once we think that okay, the things are going very well and artificial intelligence is going to transform the world, but the next day we see that we get a new algorithm or we get a new API or we get a new news that okay, that was just a small thing, something new has come which is much more bigger than the previous one. So that keeps us exciting. Means the word of innovation is great. So that's what we try to do at all our workplace through our research scholars and scientists, that we try to innovate.
Right. So currently, today there is lot of hype over artificial intelligence. While the ground truth could be completely different, you are super vested in artificial intelligence, machine learning, data science. So could you, from your perspective, give us the current space where artificial intelligence is right now and its capabilities?
Yeah, you are quite right that there is a lot of hype about artificial intelligence. Anybody who is working in statistics, anybody who is working for any startups, so they will say that we are doing something on artificial intelligence. But actually, they may be maybe they are making a simple graph with Excel, or they are using some data science tool. So still, they will say that they are doing artificial intelligence. But there is other side of the story also. The companies who are considering AI as their business value, so they are adding many more products and they are transforming some of their business and including AI as one of the key components to do that. So means the researchers are a different story. Means they keep on researching that what new is possible. But those people who combine the advancement in AI as well as the business sense of it, so there are some real stories there. And even if you see from very morning to evening, we are already using artificial intelligence. So when you open your mobile phone either with your face or with biometrics, so you are essentially using artificial intelligence. And then when you start talking with Alexa or you start talking with Siri or Google Assistant, so it is purely artificial intelligence application. Similarly, in the day you 10 times search something on Google, So it is artificial intelligence. So whenever you are making a smart payment anywhere, whenever you are finding recommendations on Zomato or Swiggy, or you are buying some product on Amazon or Flipkart, so they all have inbuilt AI recommendation engines. So when you are using Facebook or Instagram, essentially they have inbuilt AI. So already AI is everywhere, so we can't say that it is not being used. And recently also means there have been very fantastic stories around AI. So whether it is about AlphaGo, or whether it is there was a concert in Europe where the whole music concert was designed by an AI machine. So there was no human intervention. So previously, the creativity part that teachers used to say that this cannot be done by computers, so this will remain in the realm of humans. So now that has also been taken away. A fashion show has been designed by AI. So many paintings have been auctioned in painting houses, which have been made by AI. So really, some real stuff is happening.
Right. Yeah. So yes, I think it's a very exciting space where technology is going, and all of this till now is also. I mean, actually, it's still in a very narrow space. I mean, artificial intelligence can do only one thing. Obviously, really, really, really good. But yes, I mean, if people are saying that eventually it's going to go to artificial general intelligence and artificial super intelligence, and that's obviously later on. We'll get onto that topic later on. So you are the HOD at Bennett University. So how has the pandemic and exponential technologies impacted learning, and what, according to you, is the future of education industry going to look like in a post pandemic world?
So initially means there was some doubts and some confusion for some initial weeks in March that what is going to happen. So means the people were kind of dilly-dallying that whether we should actually go online, and there were so many kind of arguments for and against it. But now after 9 months, I see that students, faculty, as well as other stakeholders, so they feel comfortable and now means they are in tune with what is happening online. So there have been positives and negatives about it. I think the negative is only about the increase in the screen time and the kind of interaction we have with the other human groups. So there has been perceptible change in that. And the positive is that there have been so much flexibility. If you are a student, means you can means sit in your own style. You can be comfortable at your own place. You can means enjoy that luxury of flexibility. And as a teacher also, there has been uh, concerns because teachers now have to be more up to the mark because everything is streamed online, everything can be recorded, so it can be replayed. So means there cannot be stories in between, there cannot be jokes in between probably. So I think the things have become more qualitative because most of the institutions are recording the videos, so that has put a lot of pressure on the quality of the content. So that is very good. So even the online lab concept has also evolved a lot. So especially for computer science students, we see that we are using some virtual labs, and with that, some new features have already come up, where the students are able to co-create and collaborate without actually doing any plagiarism. So some wonderful means evolution has taken place in that space also.
Right, right. Yeah. So I think this COVID has kind of accelerated into adopting the digital world. Remote work, remote healthcare, remote education is suddenly looking very bright. Somehow the education industry had been lacking innovation. On the other side, if you see, the digital platform was and has always been evolving at a very, very rapid space. The edtech space, the massive open online courses. Now, this traditional education so far has been almost like a pressure cooker. It's expensive. It's creating huge student debt. On the other hand, these MOOCs and edtech startups are offering education almost free. In fact, there is this school, coding school in America. It's called the Lambda School. Now they have a very, very beautiful model. What they do is basically they offer free education coding to all their students, and the model is they hand all their students. So once they graduate, all their students are placed at some of the top companies, and only if their salary goes above a certain threshold, a commission is charged. Is this or something like this going to be the future of education? Because somehow I feel, from my perspective, the internet has become the new teacher. Podcast, there is GitHub, there is OpenAI repositories. I mean, if one wants to learn, there is so much out there in the open. What actually stops you is just your desire and intent. So is all of these technologies which is coming in, these exponential technologies like virtual reality, which is going to open up experiential learning and take us out from the classroom and into the world where we can collaborate and learn from anywhere and any person around the world. Is this the future of education? And from your perspective, what could be the future of the education? Because I think there are a lot of some of the top thought leaders are asking this question right now, what the future of education might look like.
Yeah, so your observation is absolutely right. So, like one case study that you have told about one venture, so a similar venture is already running by IIT Delhi alumni. So, they have approached me also. So, again, what you said about that online courses are absolutely free. So, even edX and Coursera offered many universities 6 months to 9 months free of cost delivery. And in our case, also, there were around 900 different certifications done by students across different streams. So, that is tremendous. So what I have seen is, even in because of this online perception, the type of projects the students are doing, that have also taken a direction which you are telling, that what will be the future of education. So definitely AR VR is going to be a key component. So even animation and gaming is going to be integrated with that. So more and more people are now trying to gamify their courses. So where students think in terms of what are the rewards, what are the phases, what are the levels of how I can reach to the next level in this particular lab, how I can get more stars in this lab, how I can means where I stand in terms of the overall student, means it is a real time ticker kind of a thing, that if you complete one assignment, then your ticker goes up slightly in relation to the other students. So that whole means thing is going to be gamified. So what many students used to think like a boring education for many of them, so that is going to be a game, and that will be done mostly on the back of the technology. And technologies, rightly you said, are AR, VR, gaming, as well as even the cloud, because everything is being hosted on cloud. So a lot of things going on cloud computing. So many sensors are going to be there. Even like you see now, the new phones have AR camera also, where they can see the depth. So similarly, the content will keep on getting enriched once we have these common tools available in the hands of the teachers as well as the content creators.
Right. Yes. I think the future of education is gamified. It's going to be non-linear, and with tools such as virtual reality, augmented reality, and 5G, which is coming in, it could completely democratize education. India, we still have a problem with complete literacy. I think we still have somewhere around 25% in India who are still not literate. Now, this there is so much opportunity over here, because literacy or knowledge is the tool with which you can do the impossible. You could be sitting in a rural part of a country, but with internet and education degree, and a desire, you can create businesses. And that's the future that we are getting into. And this podcast is all about enabling people and showing India around the world that today we are living in fantastic times, and these tools are at the cusp of becoming uh, available to everyone. It's us as a collective, the government, institutes, the accommodations who needs to come together and figure a way that how we can take this tool and take it to the deepest and the most rural part of India to educate everyone, because we are living in fantastic times now. What are the curriculum at offer at Bennett University if one wants to understand artificial intelligence, and what is the admission process over there?
So I think mean the you rightly said. I want to add into that democratization has already happened. So if you see many of the housewives, they are learning new recipes from the internet, right? You see most of the equipments that you have, electronics or otherwise, if you want to repair, so you have a video for everything. So you go there and you correct it. Even you can see mechanics in Telugu and Tamil teaching how to repair your car or how to repair your scooter. So those things are already there, and the vocational education has kind of already democratized. And I can see videos in Tamil as well as Hindi on deep learning, on artificial intelligence, and they are getting much more views than the corresponding English channels of the Indian diaspora. So, if we talk about different specializations that we are running, so we have six specializations. So, artificial intelligence is one of them. Then we have blockchain, then data science, then we have AR, VR, and gaming, and cybersecurity, and then robotic process automation. So, these are the six specializations we run. So, as part of artificial intelligence, basically, first they need to understand some bit of mathematics, and then they straight away go for machine learning courses. And then it comes to deep learning, then they go about CNN, RNN, reinforcement learning, and then they specialize either in healthcare, AI in healthcare, or AI in banking, or AI in law. So like that they can do some electives on different application areas. So this is how the flow of the AI curriculum goes. So otherwise means they also cover the core components of computer science as well. So the specialized AI courses will come to on average one course per semester.
Right, right. Now, artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, data science, reinforcement learning, generative adversarial network, neural network, recurrent neural network. So these are various subsets of artificial intelligence, and they are extremely loaded, for a common man to kind of understand what this is all about. So, could you kind of demystify or unpack each of these subsets of artificial intelligence for us, please?
So some of the platforms have already been created by different people where you don't need to actually program any of them. You can just kind of a plug and play, or you can kind of use them like buttons in traditional sense. So and you can only fulfill or fill your values around the key parameters. So basically, these are all names of different kinds of neural networks. So deep learning is actually a kind of a new avatar of the traditional neural networks, not much different in philosophy or the foundational concepts. So in this deep learning, if you are talking about that you want to process images, then you will talk about convolutional neural networks. And wherever you are talking about processing a sequential thing, for example, a sentence is a sequence thing where means you cannot consider a word as an independent part of a sentence. Or you are talking about, let us say, language translation, where you are speaking something, or you are talking about news summarization, or all such type of things. So wherever there is a sequential relationship, there we talk about recurrent neural networks. And specifically these generative adversarial networks come where you want to generate something. For example, if you want to generate some new photos of actors or actresses, so you don't want to hire a real actor, but you want to create a dummy actor and you want to play it in your movie, so that has also become possible now. So those kind of things where you are generating something new from existing after training your model, that is about generative adversarial networks. And the simple artificial neural networks where you are doing simple predictions on tables, on tabular data. So for example, weather forecasting or pricing of housing or loan prediction. So all those kind of things will come in a normal ANN, artificial neural network.
Right, right. So these technology, they are growing exponentially. The GANs or the deep fakes, they can have profound impact. Today there are social media companies who have actually manipulated elections. There are some of the top social media companies where fake news has been pushed. Obviously there are some great things what artificial intelligence can do. I mean, it can take us into from the from your us being driving normal cars to automated vehicles, and in the space of healthcare and education and so forth. So could you give us the pros and cons of the advancement of artificial intelligence, how deep an impact it could create in India for businesses and common people, the pros and the cons?
So you are right. The weaponization is very real. So it has already happened actually in many countries where AI-based content has been delivered to different platforms, and it has been specifically built to polarize people, and it has also means resulted as per their requirements. So that is a very clear weaponization where the governments are being elected by the use of AI. Similarly, weaponization is also happening a lot in the defense forces. So it means unimaginable money being spent by China and US on uh, means enabling AI for their defense purposes. So there have been already some war vessels which are now autonomous, so which are without any human intervention. So that will be more easier for the people to step into a war kind of situation. And what has resulted because of AI is that you don't need to start a visible full-fledged war. So you can actually do a very small pinpointed interventions where you are trying to attack the crucial or the critical infrastructure, whether it is the information related or the network related or communication related, and still anybody cannot directly kind of put fingers on you that you are the culprit. So that is a very dangerous game that is kind of evolving. So we need to be means very thoughtful about that, and essentially no single country will be able to stop it. So there has to be again a consortium, like we have a nuclear powered group. So similarly there has to be a means there will be a group which will be having key controls on different aspects of AI. So unless that doesn't happen, then there is a definitely a possibility of going it out of the hands and out of the control of the human race. So that is a real danger. And if we come to the, like you said, what the businesses in India are doing, so India is catching up, so catching up fast. But as of now, if you see, there was a report that out of the top 200 AI companies in the world, not even a single one from India. So that means we need to do a lot. So again, if we come in terms of investment, if you see the previous budget, the budget allocated for all these futuristic technology, if you compare it with China or US, it is not even 1% of that. So that is the state of affairs. Means we have our own limitations. Government has its own limitations. But even the startup culture, those startups who are doing very well and who innovate and who reach up to a certain level, so they are also kind of bought by all those multinational companies which are outside the country. And many startups, they start from this mindset only, that we are going to be sold. So essentially means at the end, again, we think that most of our brilliant human resources, they are being used by people who are outside the country.
Right, right. Yeah. So, yes, you rightfully pointed out that artificial intelligence, if you go to see, China and US is leading the race, and we don't have a single unicorn when it comes to artificial intelligence. I hope that this changes. I hope that the government realizes the importance of exponential technologies. I don't think it's just artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, IoT, blockchain, augmented reality, virtual reality, mixed reality, 5G. I think all of these are coming together, and whatever which is going to happen from here onwards is going to be magical, because these technologies are super potential and can create huge transformation. Besides the transformation, these technologies have got the potential to create huge disruption if we do not have a larger conversation. Because if you go to see, there are already individual, not even national, individual scientists, researchers from around the world who are researching deeply to create artificial general intelligence that is, which could, whichever country comes to acquire or develop artificial general intelligence will, I believe, will be able to rule the world. So what do you think we, as India, as a country, need to look at artificial general intelligence? And do you know of any Indian researchers, companies, or individuals pursuing artificial general intelligence?
So what I know is that artificial general intelligence is definitely being pursued by many countries, and some of that secretly. And there are some of the hints from some research papers that are currently being published in different journals. So, in recent months, a survey was done in India that how many researchers in AI are working on the core AI, not on the application side of AI. So, that number was not even in three digits, it was in two digits. So the state of affairs was not encouraging, and most of them were working on academic projects. So means, and some of them were part of the multinational offices that have been set up in India. So these were the two major groups in that. So as of now, I don't see any person visibly working on AGR in India. So there may be some Indians who may be working on this, but not in India.
Right. Yeah, yeah. That's quite sad, because these technologies can completely create transformation. So you're also the director at leadingindia.ai. Could you talk about that initiative and your partnership and your vision with it?
So leadingindia.ai was started with a vision that it can enhance the AI ecosystem in India, because there was perception that the right perception that China is much ahead of India, and we need to have an initiative which can from come from bottom to top, so that it can involve all the stakeholders. If it comes from top, then many times it only remains like a elite initiative and it doesn't go to the ground. So that's how means we took the help of AICT, Niti Aayog. Then we also collaborated with NVIDIA, Amazon for their services, and we enrolled 1,000 plus institutions who were to be mentored for AI skilling as well as AI research. So our target was to train around 1 million students through Train the Trainer program, where we trained more than 10,000 trainers. So that particular target has been completed. So we have created 100 plus research groups across the country who are working on different problem areas. And we also conducted around 300 plus workshops across the length and breadth of the country. So there were also internship modules, there were sabbatical modules, there were startup mentoring programs. So multiple conceptual tools were used which were necessary for building the ecosystem. Because the core philosophy was that if you give a workshop, if you give a training, if you give a skilling, and you come out of it, then you are just kind of filling a bucket with water and throwing it out. So unless you don't follow it up with projects, you don't follow it up with internship, with some hackathons, with challenges, and keep on updating their knowledge because the technology is changing very fast. So whatever workshop they may have done a year ago, that may have no meaning right now unless they have not built upon that. So we try to build that whole ecosystem so that students can do some real projects from the startups of their locality. Students can work on some real data sets. Students can do some real internships. So that is what made the whole thing exciting. And one of the student feedback was that my association with leadingindia.ai was transformation in my life. So that is the kind of work we did, that even if they spent 1 month with us, so they felt that they have used the most of their time, and it is equivalent to multiple years of their learning.
Right, right, interesting. Would you like to share some of your student projects, exciting student projects that you have done?
So students have done exciting projects that ranges from healthcare, that ranges from media outlets where they have done news summarization. So where means there are now many people who don't like to study a lot of material. They just want summarized news. And the students are also doing projects on activity recognition, where we are using some drone footage or some camera footage from means where you can find out what activity people are doing. For example, if you are in a flood hit area, or if you are in a area with a natural disaster, from the help of drones some people are trying to get help. So they are either raising their voice or they are kind of waving their hands, so you can immediately find out, and that can send a trigger to the agencies concerned. So similarly, in different situations, different activities can be automatically tracked. So that is one project that has been successfully done. Then we are also working on some surveillance projects where we can find out that across the border or across the boundary of some organization, if some particular people are trying to sneak in, so those kind of actions can be tracked using CCTV cameras and others. So yeah, I mean, there are projects in almost all domain areas. In healthcare, we are working on some oncology related projects. So, where we are getting data from some clinics, and we are trying to classify the radiology data. So, depending upon that, whether that person has a particular disease or that person doesn't have a particular disease. So, things are going well.
Right, right. All of this that you summarized, I mean, your students doing something about drone footage, surveillance project, oncology, and getting summarized news together. These whatever you spoke about, once it goes to enterprise mainstream, I think it will completely transform and disrupt all traditional industries. And somehow, from my perspective, I see that we are not open to change. We still hold on to everything which is old and traditional, and the future is coming really, really fast. We are the cusp of the fourth industrial revolution. All of these technologies, and once possibly maybe we have 5G by 2021 or 22, whenever the spectrum gets released. The entire world is going to change. Everything is going to, right from your education, your healthcare, your training and simulation, workforce, everything is going to change. But somehow, are we as a country creating the future workforce? Because of COVID, now social distancing is being pushed. Social distancing will lead to further automation. Automation will lead to further job loss. All of these technologies are creating instead a situation where instead of 200 or 300 people at one point in time you used to require can be done by 3 or 4 people. We are getting into the future very, very, very fast, very quickly. We are at the cusp of genetically redesigning us. It might sound very weird, but this is what is happening in the world. We're looking at age reversal, we're looking at quantum computing, we're looking at autonomous vehicles, and all of these are coming fast. While our traditional education is still hanging on to the old ways of linear education functioning, are we prepared for the future of from my perspective, I think we need lifelong learners. We need to reskill and we need to upskill continuously. Are we pushing our students towards that direction? What is your perspective on that?
So when we talk about the creating the future workforce, so we are doing it in some way and we do lack in some other way. So because like what I told you, the students doing projects. So but what kind of projects they are doing is mostly application oriented projects, which in the future will again become some kind of a plug and play game. So most of them don't like to work on the foundational research. So most of the foundational research is coming from outside. So when those people get the patents on that and get the IPRs on that, and then they keep on building and then they keep on earning on those IPRs. So that kind of culture is lacking. So we just use some GitHub code and we just use some existing APIs and we try to build on something onto that. And teachers are also happy, organizations are happy that okay, our work is going on. But we need to change our gear, and we need to change our thought process, and we need to build some products at home. We need to build some IPR at home, so that word said that this is the research which has come from India, this is the product which has come from India, so this is the system which has come from India. So we don't need only manufacturers who are coming to manufacture their product and the product is actually registered outside or has its patent outside. But we need something which is our own and being built by our people. So I think that will bring a real transformation. That will be a success story. Otherwise, it will be always a kind of a half truth and half success.
Right. Yeah, yeah. We need first principle thinking if we need to create complete transformation. So you are also the director of NVIDIA Bennett Research Center for Artificial Intelligence. So can you talk about some of your research work, projects, or collaboration with startups that you're really excited about?
So NVIDIA Research Center on AI is a very resource intensive facility. So we have a supercomputing facility housed in that center. So we have NVIDIA DGX V100, which is almost equivalent to 40,000 machines. So that helps us to churn our data very well. So we, with the help of that only, we are able to work on some of the key projects. So even in some of the hackathons we have done, we have also created some content for NVIDIA APIs. So where our students worked on some TensorFlow APIs and they tried to compress the model. So what we do is we try to concentrate on the whole life cycle of the project. Otherwise means that remains a lacuna in the whole community, that they only work on developing a model and try to prove their accuracy, but that is not enough. So you need to deploy that product also, because it needs to be deployed mostly on mobile phones where the resources are compressed. So we need to see that those models are compressed, their size is less, and they are able to work in a real life setting on a mobile phone. So those things are very important, that those projects are working in a real life situation. So then another thing we are creating is we are trying to create some data sets so that the other people can also work on those particular data sets and build on our research. So we are having different kind of cameras with different kinds of sensors, and we try to create different data sets which are useful for some of the critical applications relevant for the society. So that is another thing we do.
Coding, programming is currently the most hyped career option. There are parents who are going bonkers and pushing their kids to learn coding starting as early as age 6. And somehow I feel that there is a blind rush to just push kids into something which they think is cool, without deeply understanding what that tool is or what it could do. Now, if you go to see, there are some of the top companies who are building applications, solutions which will not require coding. We are getting into the no code world. There is GPT-3 already doing text to code. Will in another few years, when machines do get intelligent, will coding or any invention or discovery or research go out of the hand of humans and go towards the domain of artificial intelligence? Is this as a conversation should be taken to those parents and in the country at large, that if we do something, it has got to come with passion and a desire to do something rather than just wanting to do something because it's cool?
Yeah, you are right. Means I am also not in favor of kids starting coding at the age of 6 or like that. So because that is the period where they need to grow, where they need to play, where they need to make connections, where they need to know the word. So the another side of the story is where you said that there is going to be no coding and auto coding kind of stuff. But for no coding and auto coding, also in the background, you need a lot of coding. So we will need many people still, because it is not going to be a one integrated application which will run the whole world. So those different complex systems will remain in place, and all of them will need upgradation in view of the upcoming technologies. So a lot of manpower is required, but definitely the coding complexity is not of type which used to be before. So, for example, now if we want to write a neural network, it can be a single line of code in TensorFlow or Keras, which may have been 1,000 lines of code in C, C++ previously. So that skills are going to be slightly different, and probably you need to know a lot of stuff to get the things integrated so that it works well in the real situation. Not only that it works in isolated way and only your prototype is working, so that may not help. So, but definitely coding will remain mainstream, at least for the near future that I can foresee.
Zabi. Thank you, Deepak. It was a pleasure and honor to talk to you and get your insights. I think we're living in a fantastic world. All of these technologies, I think, stands to completely redesign and transform mankind. And the choice remains on us on how we use these tools. Now, some of the top global leaders in the world, like Elon Musk and some of the biggest startups, are not looking at certificates. They are not really looking at those, traditional driven education you coming from. They don't give a damn about the certification. They're looking at people who are honest, hardworking, and have a desire and intent to learn more, improve, and build things, reinvent completely. I personally feel that we are entering a future of abundance. What excites you the most for the 10 years, and where do you see yourself in the next 10 years?
So I think I consider myself fortunate that I am in the company of the people who are in the futuristic technologies. So I think that is the most important thing, to have access and have company of people who are defining the word. So rest means what you said. If you are hardworking and if you are honest with yourself, then automatically you will be part of the world who will be making an impact of others' lives. So take care of your company and take care of the people around you, and I think you will work well.
Lovely, lovely. Thank you, thank you. It was a pleasure and honor again to have a conversation with you. You're doing a great thing with whatever you're doing. Keep on doing that. And to my listeners, if you like what you see in here, please press the subscribe button. Until next time, see you guys. Bye bye. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.